We're talking about baseball today, despite not knowing if we're going to see baseball tonight, because last night athletes decided to strike because of the treatment of black people in America, so games got canceled. And the same very well could happen today. And I understand why that can be frustrating for you. You put in work to research for your DFS lineups, and you don't get that time back. You can get your entry fee back if an entire slate gets canceled, but you don't get that time back. And for me, I'm doing research for 3 hours each day before I even say a word to any of you. And that's 3 hours I won't get back no matter what. But there are a lot of things that are more important than 3 hours of my time. There are things that are a lot more important than my entertainment with these sports overall, and human lives are at the top of that list. So again, if this slate gets canceled, I get why you would be frustrated, because our time is all very valuable, but human lives are more important than my time, than my entertainment, and they're way more important than sports. And we need change in this country. And I'm proud of these athletes, whether it be the NBA, the WNBA, MLB, MLS, tennis, whatever it be, for using their platform to do whatever they can to get that change done. That is important. And I can take solace in losing some of my time because I know that what they're doing matters. And I hope that you can take solace in that too. So again, I get the frustration, but this is more important than our time. So hopefully you can take solace in that, and we can just sit back and try to get change across the country so that hopefully these athletes don't have to strike anymore, because there won't be anything to strike about. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to take a look at tonight's 6-game main slate, with lock set for 6:37 this evening. So again, lock is at a different time than usual. It's been moved up to 6:37. There were a couple of games originally on last night's slate. They are now doubleheaders. So if you did research early, make sure you were adjusting to account for the games currently on the slate. Only one weather note for tonight. That is in Buffalo for the Blue Jays and the Red Sox. It looks like the rain odds decrease as the game goes along, so they should be good to go. Just be aware that there is some rain in the area, and you may want to check back on that game later. Assuming there is a slate today, we'll be back here at 4 p.m. Eastern time to break down tonight's slate, answer your questions about pitchers, stacks, process, whatever it may be. We'll be here on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook pages to answer those questions at that time. So make sure you are subscribed wherever you want to stream that Q&A show later today. Also a NASCAR podcast coming today and a UFC podcast from Austin Swain. Both those will be in the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed Thursday during the day. Football is back, and FanDuel is giving you a new way to play fantasy football this season with its Best Ball contest. Unlike standard season-long fantasy football, where you have to constantly make changes to your starting lineup and roster, you only have to focus on one thing and one thing only. That's the draft. All you have to do is draft a 20-player team, and you are done. Each week, your top-scoring players automatically start and will count toward your season total. The team with the most points at the end of the season wins. No setting your lineup, no waivers, no trades, just draft. It's the easiest way to play season-long fantasy football. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. Pitching preview for this Thursday made slate. Max Scherzer is at the top of the heap. He is $10,600 on FanDuel for his salary. Hyun-Jin Ryu is second. He is $9,100. We have Chris Bassett, Matthew Boyd, and Randy Dobnak as the others at $7,000 or higher. So as you can hear, it is a pretty thin slate for pitching. So let's talk about Max Scherzer, because he kind of seems to be the one true gem available to us. And the results haven't broken in Max Scherzer's favor so far this year. He has a 4.31 ERA, and there are reasons why that has happened. It's not all just luck working against Max Scherzer, but I am still in on him here against the Phillies. The two big things contributing to the poor results for Scherzer are his walk rate and his hard hit rate. The walk rate is 9.5%. The hard hit rate is 41.8%, and both those numbers are up a decent chunk from where they were last year, and it's a pretty major issue. It does lower the floor for Scherzer as well, given that those issues are in place. But the ceiling is what we care more about, and that is still there. He has a 32% strikeout rate for the full season. He has a 14.9% swinging strike rate, and those are also both down from where he was last year. So we shouldn't expect Max Scherzer to be the 2019 version yet, but it's still elite level stuff. That's helped him get 10 or more strikeouts in 3 of his 6 starts so far this season. The walks have also been less of a major issue recently. In the 3 starts since he had that hamstring injury, Scherzer's walked his 5 total batters, so that's getting better. He had 7 in the first 2 games alone, so getting better there. And the Phillies, yeah, they're a low strikeout team, but it's not really a matchup I'm enthused about targeting. But again, it's a small slate, and Scherzer is head and shoulders above every other pitcher from a talent perspective on this slate. So I do think that Scherzer's results are going to improve, and I know he still has the best upside on this slate, so he is worth targeting tonight, even with those poor results being in place. Max Scherzer, my number 1 pitcher for tonight, even with the downsides of him being considered. The only other super talented pitcher on tonight's slate is Hyun-Jin Ryu. He is in Buffalo, which has been a super hitter-friendly park so far this year. So there is a lot of risk in using Ryu in this one. So if I'm doing like 10 lineups, I'm probably having Scherzer in at least 7 of them. But I do think that Ryu is the number 2 option behind Scherzer for tonight. We talked about this already this year, but Ryu is maximizing his pitch mix to increase his strikeout rate. It seems like he's looking at the numbers and making decisions based on that. And the numbers last year said his 2 best pitches were his changeup and his cutter. So he increased the usage on both those to open up the year. What's interesting, though, is that the 4-seam fastball for Ryu has been much more effective this year than it was last year. It's a small sample, but it has been more effective. And I think that Ryu has also picked up on that, because in his past 3 starts, his 4-seam fastball usage has started to rise once again, and it's working. In those 3 starts, Ryu has a 2.49 skill interactive ERA. His strikeout rate is 27% with a 3% walk rate. That means he is letting up a lot of balls in play, which could potentially get him in trouble in this park. But I don't see anybody else really being on Ryu's level for tonight. So even with this risk, I am inclined to give him a swing tonight and see what happens. The Red Sox don't strike out very much, but only 3 teams on this slate really do. So a low strikeout matchup, less of a concern than usual. So Ryu works for me at $9,100. Not a perfect situation, not a great matchup, not a great park, but I think that Ryu, with how well he's pitching, still a pitcher I want to use for tonight. For the third pitcher, because I'm going Scherzer in cash games, focusing just on tournaments, and I want a pitcher who has a path to upside. Randy Dobnak, to me, doesn't really have that. He is facing a high strikeout team, a super high strikeout team, but he doesn't generate enough strikeouts himself to get me super enthused there. So I don't want to go there. Sixto Sanchez is interesting against the Mets. He could be really good, and I think that you could consider him, and he's probably my number 4 pitcher for tonight. But the Mets do avoid strikeouts against righties, and they didn't have a huge strikeout, or Sixto Sanchez didn't have a big strikeout rate in Double-A. So instead, I'm going to go Chris Bassett here. Kind of a combination of the matchup and the talent, because Bassett is objectively a good pitcher, like a good real-world baseball pitcher. It's just it doesn't always translate for DFS. Last year, Bassett, 3.81 ERA. It's a very good mark. This year, it's 2.97, which is another good mark, and that's why I can say he's a good pitcher. The strikeout rate is 20%. That's not necessarily ideal, but it's still 6.5 percentage points higher than Dobnak's. And Bassett has a soft matchup and can go deeper in games. Bassett is facing the Rangers. They have just a 64 WRC plus against righties so far this year. Their strikeout rate is 22%, and that is lower than the Tigers, but it's still high enough. And Bassett can generate upside via his length that Dobnak kind of can't. Bassett went 105 pitches the last time out. He has been at 80 or higher in 5 straight. And Dobnak has gone longer than 80 pitches just once this entire year. So Bassett isn't the highest strikeout pitcher, but he's good. Like from a real world perspective, he's good, and that matters. He's facing a poor offense, and he can go deep in games. I will take that for $7,800 on a slate where there aren't a ton of good pitching options. So again, I would give some thoughts to Sanchez, but Bassett is my preferred option outside of Scherzer and Ryu for tonight. So to me, it's Scherzer 1 by a mile, Ryu 2, and then Chris Bassett number 3. But I honestly think that if you went just 100% Max Scherzer, that might not be the best idea or the worst idea in the world for tonight. As far as the stacks go, we talked before about the risk in using Ryu because of the park. And if you want to hedge against that in some lineups, like you use Ryu in some lineups, some others, maybe you decide to stack the Blue Jays and just bask in that park and stack the Jays. And honestly, the Jays are my favorite stack of the night, even before accounting for that. The Jays are facing Chris Mazza. Mazza has had some short stints in the majors the past 2 years. Those are the first big league action that he has gotten. And this is his age 30 season. So it's really cool to see Mazza finally get his shot in the majors, and I'm excited about that. Mazza spent most of last year in Double-A. Strikeout rate there was 21% with a 6% walk rate, so he allowed a lot of balls in play there, and we should expect that to happen again in the big leagues. He was able to get ground balls, Mazza was. We haven't seen that follow him so far in the big leagues. He has a 40% ground ball rate across about 21 innings with a 36% hard hit rate, just an 8% swinging strike rate. So if he can't get those strikeouts, he will need to go back to getting the ground balls that he did in the minors. And even then, it might be a struggle. So I think the Jays make a lot of sense here as a stack to take advantage of what could be a very hitter-friendly park and take advantage of the balls in play that Mazza projects to allow. Randall Grichuk and Kevin Biggio are the two priorities here. They're good. They're at the top of the order, so they're 1 and 2. But Travis Shaw has been hitting third against righties recently. He's $2,500, and the results for Shaw have not been good this year. He has just a 275 WOBA, but part of that seems to have been bad luck, because if you look at Baseball Savant and check out his xWOBA, his expected WOBA, it's 346. That's a whole lot better than his actual results. Shaw is avoiding strikeouts against righties. He's hitting the ball hard, so Shaw is a key in pairing Grichuk and Biggio with Scherzer, and I'm going to have a lot of him for tonight. I think the results should click eventually. Could be tonight. Also a revenge game for Travis Shaw against the Red Sox, so it does not hurt. Travis Shaw, a good player to target for tonight, and the Jays, my number one stack. It's been a really rough start to the year for Jordan Lyles. It's been so bad that his manager, Chris Woodward, speculated that after his last start that Lyles might have been tipping pitches, and that shows that things are just not going well right now. So it's possible that Lyles rights the ship. Maybe he stops tipping his pitches, and he could turn the results around in a hurry. But even last year's version of Lyles might have been in trouble against the A's in their current form, because so far this year, Lyles has a 6.04 skill interactive ERA with a 14% strikeout rate. If we look at just the starts he has made, that strikeout rate is 13% with an 11% walk rate. The hard hit rate is 39%. He's not getting ground balls. And last year, Lyles did get more strikeouts. So again, we could see him get back to that. But even then, he still let up a lot of hard contact and didn't get ground balls. So I'm viewing the A's as being decently safe, even on the chance that Lyles does figure something out here and potentially stops pitching or tipping his pitches. It also helps that Lyles is not lights out against righties last year, because the grand majority of the A's we want to target are going to be right-handed batters. His strikeout rate was 3.1 percentage points higher against righties than lefties. So we should rank Matt Olson highest on our list, because lefties crushed Lyles from a batted ball perspective. So Olson is number one. But with so many of the other A's being righties, it is reassuring that Lyles didn't necessarily shut them down last year. So Olson is the highest ranked guy in this stack, but the righties do work too, and that's important with the A's. You have to check out what the pitcher does versus righties, and I think that Lyles is someone we can target with righties, even if he does get closer to what he was last year. For our third stack, we're going to go down to that game in Tampa Bay between the Rays and the Orioles. John Means consistently outperformed his peripherals last year. He had a 3.60 ERA despite a 5.02 skill interactive ERA. It's a major gap, and sometimes we can see pitchers who are just better than what their peripherals say over a large sample. Means did that last year. This year, Means' Sierra is actually better than it was last year, and his velocity is up quite a bit. But the results have been pretty treacherous, and I think we might have to stack against him here. The main reason that Means outperformed his peripherals last year is because he limited hard contact. He had just a 28% hard hit rate against him. If you're going to let up as many fly balls as Means does, that is necessary. A hard hit fly ball is going to be a dinger more often than you would hope. This year, the ground ball rate is up for Means. It's now 44%, but the hard hit rate has gone up almost 20 percentage points. That is a massive, massive gain, which helps explains why the ERA is at 10.13. Means may be able to correct that. The velocity is good. And again, it's always good to have extra velocity. That is always a good thing for a pitcher. And batted ball numbers take longer to stabilize than other numbers. But for now, I think it is good for us to stack the Rays against John Means. And it also does help the Rays have a lot of fun hitters who can crush lefties and can help us afford Max Scherzer. Jose Martinez and Hunter Renfroe hit 5th and 6th against the lefty on Tuesday. They're $2,500 and $2,900 respectively. They can both crush lefties. They also had Willy Adames batting 4th in that game. His salary is $2,900. He has turned things around after a slow start to the year. So I would say Adames, Renfroe, and Martinez are all priority plays against John Means for tonight. You can still go with Austin Meadows and Brandon Lau against the lefty, but I think that all those righties are value plays who can help you get to Scherzer, and I will take that for sure. Let's finish up here with things to watch. It's not the safest stack, which is why it was not in my top three, but I'm at least interested in stacking the Nationals. They're facing Spencer Howard, who is a stud prospect for the Phillies, and he's a prospect for a reason. He had a 31% strikeout rate in Double-A last year. But those were also his only 6 starts that he had above high A. In his 3 big league starts, the swinging strike rate for Howard is 9.2%. The results in the peripherals have both been not that great. So it's a small sample, and Howard is talented, and that could swing in his favor eventually. But there is enough there for me to roll out some Nat stacks for tonight. Risky, that's why it's not in the top 3, but in consideration. Similar situation with the Twins, because Matthew Boyd has looked a bit better in his 2 most recent starts, getting more strikeouts once again. And the Twins lineup has taken a pretty major hit with no Mitch Garver and Josh Donaldson, but they still work as a stacking option. Miguel Sano has been on a good run recently. He is $3,400. They got Jorge Polanco and Marlon Gonzalez as switch hitters. They're both $2,800 or lower. Nelson Cruz, obviously a good option. I think that we can afford him on this slate, given the value at hitter and given the salaries on for the pitchers. So Twins are a good stack. They're just not as good as they would look if they were at full health, with Donaldson and Garver being in there. It's a little bit lower than usual for tonight. Finally, I do think the Orioles are in play as a kind of sneaky stack against Ryan Yarbrough. Yarbrough's ERA is in line with where it was last year for the most part, but the peripherals have slipped a lot. Strikeout rate is down. Hard hit rate is up. Now, what's interesting here is that the swinging strike rate for Yarbrough is super high. So I think he's more likely than not to snap back into play soon. And that's why the Orioles aren't high on my list, but I think they are worth a look despite that. They've been really good against lefties. They don't strike out. So I am okay with the Orioles. Just know that Yarbrough could turn things around pretty soon. So the Orioles, the Twins, and the Nationals, consideration for stacks. But I feel better about the Rays. I feel better about the A's. And I feel better about the Blue Jays as well. Jays, Rays, and A's, the top stacks of tonight. That is all the time that we have for today. We can talk once again this afternoon to get you set for this slate once we know more about which games will play and which games won't. So make sure you check out the FanDuel YouTube page at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and also check out the Twitch and Facebook pages for our Q&A later today. NASCAR podcast and UFC podcast coming this afternoon as well. So check out the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. If you have questions for me on Twitter, I am at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for on the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Once again, I understand the frustration, but hopefully we can all take solace in the fact that people are trying to get change in there, and we need change. So just keep that in mind as always, and hopefully we can see some good things happen in the near future. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.